everyone. When was the last time you actually created something with code just for fun, just because it looked cool, and not because you wanted to make something functional or because you needed to fulfill some requirements on a ticket or something like that? Well, for me, that started happening a lot more when I discovered creative coding. And I'm just going to set myself a timer as well here. But yeah. So yeah, that started happening when I discovered creative coding. And since then, I've been doing, I would say, a lot of drawing with Canvas. And because I'm an Android developer, for me, it means Jetpack composes Canvas. But basically, you could do all of these things with any canvas. So if you are working with JavaScript, for example, there is a way to draw on Canvas as well. And I also think that since I started doing things just for fun, just because it looked cool, I've become a better developer. I've learned different kinds of things than I would learn with just coding something functional. And today, I want to share with you some of those learnings. And also, from both technical point of view and also from more of a, I don't know, theoretical point of view is the right word, but yeah, we'll see. But before we go to actual creative coding today, a couple of words about myself. So hi everyone, my name is Eeva-Jonna Panula, or Eevis Panula, and my pronouns are they and she. And I'm an Android developer and accessibility specialist, and I live in Finland. I'm also GDE for Android, so Google Developer Expert. And I really love to share what I've learned. So I'm here today. I'm speaking at different events. And I also write a blog. So if you're interested in that, there's going to be a link to my blog at the end of the presentation. And I'm also a disabled person. And even though that's not that relevant in the context of this talk, I just want to say it out loud, because there is this misconception that developers are never, disabled people. But the truth is, there are disabled developers as well, and I'm definitely not the only one. So I think representation matters, so that's why I also want to mention this here. And when I don't do something that's coding-related or work-related, I do different kinds of sports, and I do knitting. And I've also started developing Android apps that are somehow related to knitting, so that's my hobby as well. But yeah, that's about me. Today, we are talking about creative coding. And we have two things on our agenda today. First, we are going to talk about what is creative coding. And then I'm going to do some live coding on stage. And I really do hope that everything works. I was really confident that everything's going to work before I started with this little hiccup with the computer restarting. But everything should be working well. So there's going to be live coding. All right. So if we talk about, or when we talk about creative coding, there are lots of different definitions that could be used of it. But I've chosen to use this one. So creative coding is creating something expressive with code. These different definitions sometimes include the idea of creating something that's goal is to create something expressive rather than functional. But I actually think that things can be expressive and functional at the same time if we want. So that's why I kind of wanted to drop the idea of instead of functional here. So today, I'm defining creative coding as creating something expressive with code. And creative coding can be so many things. And when I was doing research, I found this article, What is Creative Coding by Tim Rödenbracker. And it's a great article from a bit more artistic point of view. I'm a developer, so I tend to think about things from more of a code perspective. But if you're interested, I highly recommend checking it out. But in that article, there was a great graphic about different inputs and outputs that could be used for creative coding. So things that we could use as an input and then with code transform to something else. And I decided to demonstrate creative coding with this graphic, basically. So next, we're going to talk a bit about what could be the input and output of creative coding. And if we start with the input, actually, before I go further, I just want to mention that this graphic is already a couple of years old, so some things might be missing that could be added today, and some things might feel a bit old there. So, don't worry about it. It still represents the idea there. But yeah, the input for creative coding could be, for example, geodata with GPS, maps, coordinates, satellite imagery like Google Earth. It could be music like audio, sheet music, rhythm, MIDI. It could be pure data, such as something from a database like MySQL. It could be JSON. It could be XML. It could be Excel or CSV. It could come from APIs, like social media APIs like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It could be some sort of an algorithm as the input, like, for example, Fibonacci, noise. It could have something to do with the nature of code, like flocking, cellular automata, physics simulation. It could be a random algorithm. It could be trigonometry. Or it could be hardware input, for example. So a clock, a scanner, MIDI. It could be video coming from, for example, from smartphone, camcorder, webcam, or VHS, if somebody still remembers what that thing is. It could be audio. It could be coming from microphones, like field recording, speech. It could be some sort of a Kinect hardware. It could be coming, the input could be coming from a computer, like mouse, keyboard, gamepad, or joystick input. Or it could be a video, the input could be video, there could be some analysis of video, face detection, or emotion detection even. Or it could be files like AVI, MOV, MP3, then it could be images, it could be text like a love letter, code, poem, or a book, for example. So this is already so many different things that could be taken as an input and then to transform into something else with code. So it's not just, today you're going to see some drawing with code, but it's not just that. And if we talk about the output that could be produced, it could be audio, it could be generative music, it could be MIDI, it could be text like story, brand name, poem like haikus. It could be something physical like 3D print, like data sculpture or jewelry. It could be physical architecture. It could be a microcontroller like Arduino using different things like light or motor with some sort of kinetic installation. It could be a screen with media wall, projection, like live visuals or music visualization. It could be web in a form of website or web app. It could be some other kind of user interface, what web as well is. It could be a game, or it could be some sort of graphics, like data visualization, like data art, or annual report. It could be flexible visual systems, like dynamic identity. It could be patterns used in fashion, like glitch textiles. It could be some sort of animation, like, for example, kinetic typography. So it could be really a lot of different things. And I'm actually really excited about the idea that like creative coding can be so many different things. And if you want to learn more, and especially from the artistic perspective, I again want to recommend this article by Tim Rödenbröcker, What is Creative Coding? So it explains a lot more about creative coding than I'm going to do today due to the limited time that we have together. But yeah, this is basically what I wanted to say about like creative coding today. And I don't want to go too deeply into it because, well, we could spend hours and hours in it. But yes, I thought I might have had one slide between there. But now that we've been talking about like the more of a theoretical part, I want to move into some live coding and creative coding in action. And I'm a bit nervous right now. So let's see how everything works. And OK, and then yes, OK. Now you can see my screen. It's from, OK, I'm just going to do this thing here as well. So yeah, it's a screen from Android Studio. I have a composable screen here, basically, and it's a preview of it. And for some reason, there is some cache thing where it was showing some things from the future. But basically, this is the starting point where we are like starting with live coding today. And I made a small animation for this presentation, and we're gonna, well, we're not gonna recreate that animation. We're gonna add to it. And first, I want to show you how the animation looks like, because it's like for some reason it's not showing the starting point of the ghost here, because the ghost should be a bit sad and confused, I would say. But OK, here we have the animation. So it's basically a short story of a ghost that was like, in the beginning, they were a bit confused and sad. But then when they met with other ghosts and started realizing that, hey, they are actually non-binary, they started feeling better. Because, you know, when you can actually be who you are without like pushed into other like boxes and forced to be somebody you're not, you tend to be happier than when you can't be yourself. So that's basically the story here. And I'm just going to end the preview because it can be a bit distracting. But you know, the story is about, well, the ghost realizing that they're non-binary, but it could be something else. It could be like the story could be same for somebody who is trans or bi or lesbian, for example. Those were the ghosts going on the background, the colors there, and the colors that I'm using are from different pride flags. And what we're going to do today is that we're going to add these small buttons in the like below the ghost, where you could like the user or like the person who is watching this could actually modify the story a bit by changing the ghost's like who the ghost is, I would say. And before I start coding, I just want to say, because I'm an accessibility specialist, I want to just underline that if I was creating this as a user interface somewhere, I would definitely use buttons, actual buttons, because they provide way better interaction or like support for different kinds of interactions. But now today we're going to draw things on canvas, and that supports only like pointer input, so like tapping or clicking. So and why I'm showing this today is that it demonstrates different things with Canvas, but I don't, like, as an accessibility specialist, I don't recommend doing this. I recommend using actual buttons. So, yeah. But OK, we're going to start with zooming in a bit, and then we're going to start drawing a first button. And what we're going to do is to use a draw with content modifier. Basically, add the content there as well. If you're not familiar with Android or like Compose development, then like, well, modifiers are I'm not going to actually go deeply in there, but we can draw on Canvas this way as well. I'm just going to say that. OK. So now we have the content visible. And basically, this draw with content is within the draw, like, content draw scope. That's the right scope. So that's why we can use different functions that we can use with Canvas element as well. And first, we're going to define a couple of helpers here. So the button size will be a size. And I'm just going to define it as 56 density-independent pixels to pixels. And because the size wants width and height as different values, I'm just going to add it 2 times because we are drawing a rectangle here. And then I'm going to define button offset, because we want to like position the button in a certain point. And right now, it's going to be under the ghost in the center. So I'm just going to define the offset here. And the x would be the size of the canvas's center x coordinate minus half of the button size, or width, because we want to center it. And then the y coordinate would be size of the, like the height of the canvas minus button size height there. And now that we have these helpers, we can use draw path. And why we are drawing a path instead of a rounded rectangle is that we're going to use that path later. So that's why we are using path. So yeah, let's define here the path. And I'm going to add the actual things into the path later. I'm just going to first define the color, which is colors, colors is a helper object I have there, and I'm just going to use the non-binary black. And then for the path, we add round rect, because we want a round rect there, or the shape of the button should be a round rect in this case. And then it's round rect, and this is actually pretty, like, making me a bit nervous to type here. Round rect takes in a rect, which then takes it has the size parameter where we put the button size, and then offset parameter for button offset. OK, now we have a black rectangle on the right place. We still want to make it a round rect, so, or like a, well, we want to have the corners as round, so I'm just gonna, OK, yes, it went away. It takes in a corner radius, and let's put it to 12 density-independent pixels, 2 pixels. OK, it's a round rect. Next, we're going to change the color to be actually a brush. So we want the flag colors to be visible in a button. And we change it to brush. And then I have a helper enum, or I have enums for these different flags. So I'm just going to use the gradient type non-binary. And then I have a helper function getGradient. And I'm just going to pass in the button size, and then offset, which is button offset. And now we have the non-binary flag in the non-binary flags colors in the button there. Okay, the next thing would be to add the other buttons as well. And we are going to do it in a way that we first define the buttons as a list of gradient types. And I'm just going to add the non-binary gradient type by gradient type trans, and then finally gradient type lesbian. And then we are going to just wrap part of the code that handles the drawing with map indexed. So we are going to map through the buttons or the gradient types. And actually with map index, because we need the index there as well. And the parameters are index and type there, or it could be gradient type, but now I'm using type. And now that we are mapping through this list of 4 items, and we still have this non-binary flag as the brush there for all of these 4 items, we can see that it's more vibrant. So the colors in the flag are more vibrant. So the next thing is that we are actually going to use the type of the button or like the gradient type that we are mapping through. And now we get the most visible one is the lesbian flag with a bit murky colors, because they are still on top of each other, and there is a bit of opacity for each of them. And then the next thing that we want to do is to put them actually in a row and in the center of the area. So for that, we're going to need a little variables to help us. And the first one is padding. So we want to have some padding between the buttons, and that's going to be 16 density independent pixels, 2 pixels. And then we will need the start padding as well, so that we can actually center these items. And for start padding, we need to calculate the width of, we're going to take the width of available space, and then subtract the button widths, all the button widths, and then paddings between the buttons. So not for as many buttons, but like 1 less padding than there are buttons, and then divide it by 2 to get equal amount of padding in the beginning and at the end. So let's do that. So we're going to take size width, then we're going to subtract the buttons size times button size dot width, and then we're going to take buttons size -1 times the padding, and then we still need to wrap this and divide it by 2. Okay, now we have the start padding, and then we are going to change the offset here so that the buttons are not on top of each other, but next to each other. So the x coordinate or the x offset would be start padding plus index times button size, and so buttons width, and plus the padding. And now the padding is not part of there yet, so I'm just going to add it there so that these buttons actually align correctly, and there is a bit of padding between each of them. Okay, now we have the buttons, but we don't yet have any way to interact with them. And what I'm going to do next is to define a new variable called position, which we remember, and its mutable state of, and the offset 0 is the default value here, because, well, it needs to have some default value, so offset 0 is good. And then after that, we add a pointer input modifier so that we can call the detect tap gestures. So when a user taps on the screen, whenever on the screen, this detect tap gestures is called, and it has a it has this like offset of the like where the user taps. We can get that from detect tap gestures, and then we can set the tap position to be this position. OK, now we know the tap position where the user taps. Next, we need to do something with that. All right. The first thing we do is actually to move this path away from the draw path, and we're going to define a variable called path, or it could be button path for making it more obvious, and then we're just passing the path to draw path. And path has actually this really neat method to get its bounds so that we know that which areas belong into that path and which don't. And that's why we wanted to use path and not round rectangle, like the draw round rectangle function within the compose. And now we can check if so we can check if the, OK, I'm not going to write at the same time when I'm talking, because I'm going to write things that I'm talking here. So we're going to check if the current tap position, so where the user tapped, is actually within those bounds of that path. And we're going to define a isSelected variable, and then we're going to get the bounds from the button path with getBounds. That's the name of the function here or method here, and then we can just check if those bounds contain the tap position. So this way we know if the current button is actually tapped or selected. And then I'm just going to show you something I forgot to show in the beginning. So we have the current gradient type defined as a state variable here, and then at the bottom we are passing the gradient type to the ghost animation that I have defined. So now that we can just check that if the current button is selected, then we can set the gradient type to be that type there. Now everything should work, so I'm just going to start the interactive mode, and then I'm just going to wait a little bit so that the colors actually start appearing so that we know if it actually works. And yeah, now we can see a bit of yellow, and I'm just going to click the bi flag, trans, lesbian, back to bi, back to non-binary. So now we have a implementation where we can actually click these different buttons, so areas on the canvas, and then change the colors of the ghost. And this way give the spectator a way to modify the story here a little bit. I'm just going to stop the interactive mode because it's a bit distracting for myself. Before I'm switching back to my slides, I want to just say something about how I do creative coding. And if you are an Android developer, you might have, or even like, even if you don't do Kotlin, don't do Android development, you might have noticed that I might have taken some shortcuts there and didn't do it in the best possible way or something. And that's something that I really love with creative coding. I can just start and do the implementation that works, and then maybe like make it better later or not. And it's just like, I have the freedom to do that, and I think it helps with learning as well, so that I don't need to all the time think that what's the best way of doing this, or like implementing this thing, and so that like when I create a pull request, then there would be just a lot of comments like, you could do this better, and this better, and this better. So like, I really love the idea of just like implementing something, and if it works, it works. It's more important than like creating the most beautiful code out there. So yeah, okay, I'm just gonna switch back to my slides, hopefully. No, it's this way. All right. So yeah, we're starting to wrap up with the talk. And today we've been talking a little bit about creative coding, what it is, what it can be, for example. And then I've showed you demo of one way of doing some creative coding by drawing on a composed canvas. And I really hope that you've learned something today. Or if you haven't really call it learning, I hope that you've had some ideas. And if you actually had some ideas that, hey, like that sounds interesting, I could try that input method to create that output method, I just want to encourage you and just try it. Like, you don't need to make it something to display for like everyone. You don't need to make it like a art exhibition or anything like that. Just try it out. You might learn something there. So I just want to say thank you for listening. My name is Eeva-Jonna Panula, or Eevis Panula, and if you want to find my socials, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, whatever, they're all on my website, which is eevis.cz, so eevis.cz, and my blog is there as well. And if everything goes well today, I'm not certain about it, but I've also like scheduled a LinkedIn post to share one blog post about creative coding that I've written this year, or was it already last year? And there is a series of these blog posts, so this is the last one of them. So you can find that one from my LinkedIn. And I think I had something else. Yes, now I remember. So I'm not going to do a public Q&A here, but if you have any questions, you can find me after my talk, and I'm going to be around for like a couple of hours before heading out. So yeah, come and ask that. And yes, there is the feedback QR code as well. But yeah, hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you're going to have a good rest of the conference.